Okay, hi everybody, and I hope you can hear me. I can't quite get the rest of the class to come back in. Hey everybody, it's time. All right. Now look, I just... Hey Winnie, hey all, we have begun. We have begun. Here they come, the tens, the hundreds, the... Oh, golly. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we can reach you, and I trust, I hope that you can hear me. It looks like it is broadcasting too. You'll be in a little while. We're dealing here with some background information on the first initiation, and I want to say that however much you study these things, keep studying, because there's always going to be new insights. And as I've said about the teaching, it has a way of being written on the ground floor, and that's wonderful enough. But when you start putting together the different parts of it, it's like the arcing of the positive to negative pole or negative to positive. It's a Mercury thing. The light flashes forth. The light really begins to flash and increase your illumination more than simply reading it in kind of a horizontal manner. This is a vertical manner. We are reading as he advised us in terms of how does he call it? Topical study. Topical study. Now, I advise you to go to YouTube. You know, Moria Federation Esoteric Education. You know, Moria Federation is the, what can I call it? The internet wing, as it were, of the University of the Seven Rays, and the very, at this point, the very formal school. So go there, and there's a lot for you to study. Now, I know meditation, study, and service. Meditation, first ray, study, second ray, service, third ray. And I tend to emphasize the study quite a bit. They're all very important, and they form a triangle that has to be kept in balance. But let me just say that there is a lot to absorb before the new dispensation is given out. Now, you know, like last night we had a compilation with 94 pages, and now we have an hour, roughly, for 23 pages. So we're just facing the impossible. But I want to say that on YouTube right now, which is our new server platform, because it's got a lot of advantages, you will find my commentaries on the first, second, and third initiations so far. And if you read, is everything okay? You want me to make the picture smaller? Bigger? I don't know if anybody can stand that. Okay. Okay. So anyway, first, second, and third initiations are on YouTube. So they'll take you each about a week. Then you'll be an initiate of the third degree. You can go on to the fourth. The study of the later initiations, they're not so relevant to us, but we got to know something about them. They come in... They come in on Makara, and I've done the whole last 400 pages of the rays and the initiations as video commentary, and it's all on Makara. So you can study those initiations there, and our staff, Joe and BL in this case, are very helpful in writing short synopses of the various programs, so you'll know somewhat what you're getting into. Now, I know that sometimes people do better when they read, and some people like to listen. The nice thing about listening is when you're driving a car, you can listen more successfully than read. And, so it will bring you, that's what I always used to do. I used to take in those days, what they called the Walkman, and I'd go out jogging and I'd just keep running, and listening to Cosmic Fire. Sped me along the way, and I think I got 3 times through Cosmic Fire just jogging. So listening is good too, and we will strip out the video part, so you'll just have the words as well. And you can see it on your phone as well. Okay, well look, let's just say a few things about the first initiation, which I have done. Maybe there's, 11 programs on the first initiation on YouTube. And that's just the beginning, okay? So what's the foundation here? It's the birth of the Christ in the heart. It's the grounding of the soul in the brain. It's the beginning of real soul infusion. Now, in order to fulfill that first initiation, you have to love your fellow human beings. You have to be doing some kind of spiritual study. DK calls it esoteric, but I'll just say that, let's just say any kind of spiritual study will do, because there's obviously a lot of people on different rays who are taking the first initiation, but they don't necessarily get into the esoteric side. So something that deepens your soul life and the willingness to apply discipline to your life to create greater beauty of life. Those are 3 factors involving the first initiation, and there are others. If I go looking for this, though, I'm going to wait. Maybe if I can look over here. I just sent this to Tuya, and maybe I can find out what it is. Okay, okay. So let's see. First initiation images. No, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Here it is. First initiation requirements. Right. So excuse me, I'm going to be a little off the screen here for a minute as I look on the other computer. All true aspirants. So I gave you 3 of them, right? So discipline, love of your fellow human being, and spiritual study. These are 3 really important ones. Now, in case we think, as sometimes foolishly we do think, oh, this is the first initiation. Everybody's taken the first initiation, but it isn't so, of course. And to emphasize the importance of it, we have to realize that the Christ himself is said to take the first initiation every time he administers that initiation to another person. I'm sorry, I just can't get this thing. But it's a lot better than it was last night when I had the cord hanging down my nose like this. So I figure this is an improvement. Okay, so anyway, the Christ is said to take the first initiation again himself, personally, every time a candidate takes the first initiation. So if he can do it, we can keep on studying this. All true aspirants have taken the first initiation. A true aspirant, think of what that means. You aspire from the time your 5th petal is really getting open, but you haven't taken the first degree yet, not until that 5th petal is completely open, but you're not even considered a true aspirant unless you have taken that degree, and then you're really on the path. So what are some of the other requirements? And then, measure yourself against those requirements. The intensive struggle to grow into the spiritual life, to follow the ways of determined orientation to the ways of the spirit, or we might say soul, and to live by the light of that spirit, and we might say soul, although he is using the word spirit. So, the monad has its very first sort of implantation within the soul at the time of the first initiation. We don't register it in our brain consciousness, but It is there, and that is the Spirit. So at the first initiation, the Spirit, whatever that means, does really anchor itself in the soul, and I guess that would mean some stimulation of the jewel in the lotus, which is the monadic representation within the causal body. Now, what else? And he says, I believe that many who read my words will recognize these determinations as the basic motivation of their lives. So, and then he says, well, and when you add to it this determination to study and to know, add to all these requirements this mental thing, because to take the second degree, we have to have spiritual intelligence and mental illumination. So when you add to it those tendencies to become mentally illumined and to use or discover what spiritual intelligence is, he says that is the characteristic of the period around the second initiation, or that you have taken the second initiation. And the great majority of Master DK's students that he made into a group, they had taken the first initiation, and only one had not. Only one. But he did it's interesting how the masters work, because this one who didn't take the first initiation was a third-ray soul, a financier, money, and a sixth-ray personality. And he made the books available. And DK says, you'll see we're not ungrateful. And DK took him in as an accepted disciple, even though he had not taken the first initiation. And then the guy had a lot of glamour, but he did a good service for the hierarchy. The hierarchy was grateful, and the hierarchy was also protecting him, because they said, look, in your last life you almost fell into the left-hand path. And rays 3 and 5 there, rays of form. His rays were interesting: third-ray soul, sixth-ray personality, fifth-ray mind. His major glamour was about being a scientist, which he wasn't. First-ray astral body, third-ray physical body. So a lot of hardline rays. And DK said, we're protecting you, as well as showing our gratitude for the service of distributing our work. Only one then had not taken the first initiation. So when you look at the majority of students that are really into DK and really into theosophy, the chances are, the probabilities are, that they have either taken the first initiation or are on the verge of doing so. And then a lot of lives can go between the first and the second, or just a couple, depending upon your intensity, the way you live at a necessary point of tension. And remember too, a lot of smart people don't take the first initiation. So before the first initiation, they built up a whole lot of ability. Then they take the first initiation, and those abilities that are built up before the first initiation are not lost. So maybe afterwards they spend a little less time, because they've already worked hard in other things. But the main thing is glamour, Between the first and second initiation, we all have a lot of glamour we have to take care of, and that veils the truth. So basically, we have to learn to think the truth and tell the truth, and finally be the truth, and the truth will set us free, and it will detach us, and it's a tough road to go. But remember what Blavatsky said about Master DK: I know a youth so pure that no lie would ever cross his lips. So there we go. And if we tell the truth, we will see the truth. So that's one of the big training for seership, is around truth. All right, anyway, the key features, I think I've gotten into that. We ground the Christ principle in ourselves. And later, in society. We ground that principle. The intelligence begins to flower because the energy is rising from the sacral center to the throat center, so one is becoming creative in a higher sense. It's often the task of the younger souls to provide a lot of vehicles for souls of their own type. And that kind of, it seems like the higher one goes on the ladder, except if there's some special karmic requirement, the fewer children one tends to have. So the sacral center really moves to the throat center. But of course, we don't want to have so few children that disciples can't get in. That's a problem, he tells us, and we have to, well, it just depends on our karma. There's just some lives when we will not be family people, and other lives when we will. Bach is the living example of someone who can be creative and still have 20 children. Of course, I think it was much harder on his wife than it was on him. And he had 2 wives because you just can't, that it wears you out, I think. So just imagine having 20 children and writing as much music as he did. There's a story about, Bach was, in a way, he was kind of working at a third-rate church. He was a cantor for a church. They didn't think he was such a great musician at the time. So his work kind of fell down, and people didn't know much about him and all that. So one day, Mozart is having he sent somebody to buy some fish at a local fish market. And it comes back wrapped in Bach's manuscripts. Paper, pieces of music Bach had written, wrapping the fish. And Mozart, of course, who could hear everything in his head, he looks at it, and he can't believe what he's seeing. So he runs and buys all the paper from the fish market. This is all part of the rediscovery of Bach. And the fact that you can't, your creativity will somehow emerge even in strange ways. So anyway, little story. So also with the first initiation, the coming into activity of the throat center because of the third ray. Now, when you take that initiation, the probability is that you will have a third ray personality right before it or during it, maybe with a seventh ray mind and a seventh ray brain. Some unusual things can go on there, but the throat center is being stimulated very strongly, and that's one of the reasons for that third ray personality. So those are some of the key features. You ground the Christ principle, your intelligence begins to flower, the throat center or the higher creativity becomes activated, you're highly, highly motivated towards the things of the soul, you're reaching out for that higher power. It's been my impression that a lot of people who are in the 12-step programs, they say there's only one cure for alcoholism, it's religion. It's a bit of a joke, but there's something there because there's such a deep dissatisfaction with life that you have to have something else. So the people in the 12-step programs, they're reaching out for something more. And I think they talk about it as the higher power and we are spiritual and not religious and all that kind of thing. I think that's the period of the first initiation. That it's a very spiritual type of organization, AA, and maybe, was it Dr. Bill and Bob, I don't know, a couple of guys, heavy alcoholics, they were in a room and a huge light broke forth in the room that they both attest to. And they were overshadowed and they started this whole Alcoholics Anonymous, and even with the 12 steps, it's amazing. Such an esoteric organization in a way that doesn't use esoteric language. So, that's about the period of the first initiation. And when we have described the requirements of this first initiation, then you can see many people fulfilling that. Yes, dear. Is everything okay? Okay. That's Tuya behind me, and she doesn't realize I have the camera on. Oh, and that's Tuya disappearing, having realized that the camera is on. It's okay, dear. Just open the window. That's great. There's a lot of hot air coming out here, so the window would help. Okay. Okay, I'll turn it off. Okay, here goes. This is my modest wife. Go. Okay. Now, many thousands have taken the first initiation. It's called the birth of Bethlehem, and Bethlehem means the house of bread. And of course, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, those are the three first letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and the Beth is connected with the second ray. So it's the Christ principle, being born in the manger or in the animal kingdom. Dear, you can, I'm getting that look, Why have I got my picture on here, Is this just so I can communicate with you? Alrighty. I'll hear more about this later. It's indicated because so many people are being reoriented to spiritual things. They're interested in human good and human welfare. They're searching for the light. They're longing for peace. These are all signs that we're on the eve of taking that first initiation all together. It's a wonderful thing. And right human relations and goodwill and all of that's coming. And that's what the struggle today is all about. So we're learning how in this time to have the mind that is. Let's see what will happen if I try to move this down. We're having the mind that is in Christ, and returning to the land. So many signs of it. Mother Earth, the true Virgin Mary, he talks about here. The gospel story, people moving throughout the world. It's the story of Joseph and Mary having to go on a migration to get taxed, through the land of Egypt and back to their place. The time is ripe for the first initiation of humanity, and millions, he says, will have taken it by the year 2025. Now, he starts out with thousands when he's writing this back in the 1930s, and millions by 2025, and they're going to help us solve the economic problem, because so many of them will be on the seventh ray. It's the seventh ray that is particularly associated with this first initiation. Seventh ray first, sixth ray second, fifth ray third, fourth ray fourth, but you think we keep going that way, not exactly. First ray, fifth initiation. Anyway, the seventh ray is very important, and they are the people who control that by which man lives. So the whole economic issue is being helped there by these financially involved initiates of the first degree in the economic group, and maybe in group number 10, which is the magical group, and more that's coming in, and we are going to see our world reordered along higher principles, provided that we keep the soul in it. Okay, that's the issue, because we also enter a dangerous time now, the coming of the mental magicians, the purely mental magicians. And that's why people like ourselves who are interested in white magic of the soul have to learn how to balance those things. Now I'm going to just try to take a look there. Okay, I just got to make sure this is being recorded somehow, and so far it looks like it is. All right, well, I'm just going along, and if anybody has any comments or questions, either to you or I can repeat them, because I know you don't have microphones where you are right now. And there's no way to use this kind of broadcasting system. It's not a webinar, so, anyway. A lot of lives can pass between the first and second initiation. And the probability is that we're somewhere in there, okay? But with the second initiation at least in sight. Because you wouldn't be studying Master DK or attempting to improve yourself mentally in esoteric terms unless spiritual intelligence and mental illumination were goals. And if they are goals, that tells us that we are heading for that second degree. So anyway, however, during this time, long periods of almost unapparent growth can take place. Is it going to be 30 lives? Look, Jesus lived to be the symbolic 33. 30 of those lives, nobody ever, of those years, nobody ever heard of him. Except maybe, some of the inner brotherhood and the people who knew him. It wasn't until the baptism in the Jordan that he began his public ministry. So there's a lot of quiet going on. Of course, the story is that he was called Issa, and he went to India. Agni Yoga emphasizes this, and there he met the powers that be, and there he sort of received his mission, and he was probably guided by the Christ, who probably had a relationship with him before this. He was already an initiate of the third degree. Jesus was. So you can imagine it's called the hidden years. He just disappears. And he goes somewhere and he really learns something. Now, is it true? Is it not true? Certainly not in the standard Christian Bible. But that's the story when we deal with Agni Yoga. Okay. Dear, can you pick it up? Is it being picked up? Because I've got the text here. Oh, okay. We're just trying to handle a lot of things here at once, This is pressure cookerville, and it's hot. Imagine Finland, I think Melania Trump came to Finland a week ago, with a heavy coat. But, it was stylish, of course. But, we have here the idea that in Finland it's always cold. Not in the summer. Okay, I know, but we Americans and we stupid Americans and all that, we have the idea that it's always cold here.
Hot summers, but we did always get every second day at least the rain in the evenings. Yeah. But the rains are missing nowadays. They
it could be the climate something's happening to the climate, and we're all going to awake to that. The planet's going through an initiation too. The planet has not yet taken its second initiation of purification, but it's taking a fourth initiation between this birth initiation and the purification. So we're going through a lot of stress here on this planet, and especially in Finland. Okay, I just want to see if I can get a response here. I don't think she heard me. Okay.
Do you know what's going on here? Yeah.
Okay, the stage of little Chela ship. You know how it goes. Little Chela ship, Chela in the light, accepted discipleship, Chela on the thread, Chela in the aura, Chela in the heart, and finally the blending of the lights. It's really 7 stages of discipleship. He doesn't write about the last one, the blending of the lights, because he says you are a master by the time that is occurring. So you're blending your light with, and by the way, that is called the first initiation with respect to the star Sirius. That's the first initiation with respect to the great Syrian system of initiations, your 5th initiation. Right now, we're being trained by the code that comes to us from Sirius, but we're not even disciples when it comes to the Syrian system. So we're going to learn. Anyway, I read this before, a little chela-ship. It's around the period of the first initiation, and what distinguishes this? You've taken the first degree, you're a true aspirant, you're struggling intensively to grow into the spiritual life, you're following the way of determined orientation to the things of the Spirit, and you live by the life of that Spirit. So, do we recognize these things in us? And or is our spirituality just an on and off thing? You know, then DK would say, well, okay, you're an approaching light and a waning light. You're waxing and you're waning. You're waxing and you're waning. And Master Moria makes a joke. He says, you know, you're getting blisters on your feet from going back and forth so much. So he does crack some jokes, but they always have a point. And DK's humor is a little drier, I guess, but he has a point too. Now, you've heard about isolated unity, haven't you? Isolated unity really occurs finally at the 5th degree, when the unity that always is always visible regardless of what else is going on. There's a bunch of disunity happening, everybody's fighting with everybody else, and everything looks like it's at odds, but you always see the unity, always isolate. In your consciousness, you have isolated the unity. Now that really starts to be an issue after the 2nd degree, when we're learning about identification and Sanat Kumara and the monad and all that kind of thing, and the will. That's when we're learning those things, okay? But eventually we reach isolated unity, and he says between the stages of isolated individuality, which is where the average, you know, kind of person may be, or maybe just the beginning disciple, comes a stage called isolated identity. And this is the stage we are concerned with and its esoteric implications. Isolated identity is finding yourself as a soul. And it's the disciple up to and including the 3rd initiation. So from the time we start taking the 1st initiation, isolated identity as a soul begins to be an important factor. Once we start to take the 3rd initiation, we can, you know, kind of look ahead and sense what is isolated unity. Now, in esoteric psychology too, DK gives some very high meditations to create fusion with the soul, or soul infusion. First-ray types, isolated unity. The hardline rays in general, 1st ray, 5th ray, 7th ray. Second-ray types, inclusive reason, 2, 4, and 6. And then the presented attributes is where you really make things appear, the magicians on the 3rd and the 7th ray. So isolated unity, although it doesn't flower until the 1st Syrian initiation, you can begin to look at it and feel what it could bring. We will not have that fully until the 5th initiation, but we can begin. So a lot of us we're not in isolated individuality. The unit is alone, and yet the crowd exists. They say that about the sign Cancer, you know. We're not having that. We're having something better. The soul exists. I am the soul. My true identity is the soul, and from the 1st degree to the 3rd degree, we're working on being the soul. Okay, and then beyond that, we're working on being the whole. From the soul to the wholeness. Okay. All right, so if like I say, if any questions come up, or anything you want to say, we'll repeat the question, and or whatever, or try to address ourselves to the issue. So, going on. I have to be careful with this new system, otherwise. Okay. Once you take the first initiation, you really are within the circle of hierarchy. There's a big blue circle, and even, yeah, dear?
Is it, because I don't know, is it coming through?
If you speak into that mic...
No, from my computer, because...
No, everything's okay.
It is not coming through.
Everything's okay, and we can hear you if you speak, okay? So there's a big circle. From the time you're an aspirant, disciple, first degree initiate, you're in the big circle of hierarchy. And there's a beautiful, I haven't learned how to do this yet, from this particular computer. Otherwise, I would just go there and show you. But I'll still have to figure that out, okay? All right, let's move a little further. I think we've done now, we've done 3 pages out of 23. We are really rolling. Okay. But we'll make sure that you have this material so you can study it on your own. And here again is the famous statement: if you're a member of the new group of world servers, a true member, he addresses you as if you are a second degree initiate, because you're supposed to keep your eye open for first and second degree initiates and those that are coming up. So he says here, now notice, they should assume, the members of the new group of world servers, that all those who truly love their fellow men, you know what I mean? It's easy to say, right? I think Einstein, he said this or something. He says, I just love humanity. It's people I can't stand. So it's, and others have said that kind of thing too, So it's a lot harder in practice to, you say I love humanity, but how do we really get along? So all those who truly love their fellow men, who are interested in the esoteric, and I insert spiritual teaching, and who seek to discipline themselves in order to attain greater beauty of life, are initiate and have undergone the first initiation. Now they may seem like simple requirements, but you give these requirements to a lot of people, and it's not simple. Okay, it's beyond the ordinary reach. Now DK elaborates further. They may know nothing of the occult teaching or of esoteric techniques. So when we're looking for people we have to help, we don't necessarily say, have you read the Blue Books for 15 years? No, we don't have to do that, okay? They may know nothing of the occult teaching or of esoteric techniques, but the discipline of their lives and their realized fixed intention and service bring them inevitably, eventually, on to the occult way. They are learning to think, they earnestly seek to know the right way for humanity, and desire to ascertain the will of God. It's the beginning of not my will but thine be done. Now, around the first initiation we have a lot of that kind of thing we say, not my will but thine be done. But it's not until the 6th initiation that we get really put to the test about that. And that's what happened with Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane. He had a method to save humanity. He worked it out. And he realized that Sanat Kumara's method was something else. And he acquiesced to the higher will. Okay? So we'll all find out. They are building thought forms and are developing the power to be impressed. All right, all that's around the first initiation and involves the throat center. Okay. Let's see what else. Obviously, look, we're not going to finish this thing now, for sure. We should just make a note to you about how far we get so we can do it again next year, starting there. All right. So, okay, are you really an initiate when you take the first and second initiations? You are a probationary initiate, and these are initiations of the threshold, and the Christ as the Bodhisattva with the rod of power of the Bodhisattva, not yet the flaming diamond, is the initiator, because they are initiations involving the soul particularly. They're not yet really involving the monad. I mean, it's there, of course, but they are not yet initiations of the monad. These first two initiations are definitely taken on the ray of the soul. Now, there's a question about the third initiation. Is it taken on the ray of the soul? Is it taken on the ray of the monad? Or some combination of those? And the fourth and fifth initiations and beyond are taken on the ray of the monad. Okay. So, let's see here. Yeah, the soul reveals the first, what is to be revealed in the first two initiations. This is interesting too, about the law of economy and the law of attraction. Now, what would you think? The law of economy ruled the last major solar system. It also probably ruled the moon chain. But now, what's the big cosmic law we're working with? You know, it's obvious. It's the law of attraction, and we would have to also say of repulsion as well. So after the first initiation, he, the initiate, comes under the law of attraction, which carries and wields the energy of love, and though the law of economy is then abrogated or set aside, minimized, it preserves an habitual control over the habitual process of the form vehicles which are now used under the law of attraction. We've learned a lot. We don't have to say, okay, stomach, now digest this. Okay, heart, now beat. Okay, lungs, now breathe. The law of economy takes care of all that. But there was a time when, was it in Lemuria, that the teachers of the race were teaching people how to consciously beat their heart, breathe their lungs, digest it, that kind of thing. It was an earlier time. Now it's habitual, and we have this habit basis. It still can be a formidable enemy, and under the first degree, we have to learn a different type of control. Are there any questions or statements up to this point?
Well, one comment about that, when we are thinking about first initiation, that in one sense they are not considered really initiations yet, but still we have to understand how extremely important is that stage in human evolution, because that is the turning point when the man is turning towards the spiritual life, towards his and her real destiny, what is to become what one is within. We are supposed to become the souls on earth. And it's a long way when we think about that only in the third initiation we are considered those on the threshold in the Syrian system. When we think about here down to earth, it is very high states, but in that real system, what is the example for all of us, or the ideal? So then we are just in the beginning of really grasping. And I have been saying very often, because I tend to look what really happens down here. So our energy system totally changes. That's why it's called, the third initiation is called the third initiation, transfiguration. All of us is transfigured. We are not anymore in that sense, technically, from earthbound soul, we are technically the one who is starting to gain the energy directly, as the flower is, and the soul symbolism is about the lotus, that the lotus turns all the time towards the sun. That is how the life for the third degree is, that it is all the time towards the spirit.
Yeah, I think that's very correct. And
I just continue.
Okay.
Keep that in your mind, because I have heard and I have seen during these huge among years, 60 years in my life, and in the spiritual life about maybe 30 years. But I have seen that how often the third degree and the second degree, but not so much, but the first degree is looked down. It's like considered something so unimportant, those little ones, whatever. But when we really think about it, why on earth the Christ himself is behind all these initiations is because if we don't gain that in humanity, we still are behind the program where we should be. We should be where the Venus is at the moment, and the level of that is the perfected man, what is the fifth degree. We should be there. So that's why even the higher ones are so interested that, oh, come on, humanity, come on. Now it's the time for you, and it's the huge opportunity. So that's why don't ever underestimate and also overlook that. Give your all support you can to this, that the humanity can be taken the first initiation. And the spiritual pride should be washed away. There is nothing to be proud about the teaching if you don't really apply to that you are not helping the lower worlds, because that is what is stopping the whole system moving forward. So that
it's so good. And yeah, the Christ, what does it mean? The Christ takes the first initiation with every candidate who takes the first initiation. What does that mean? So it's so foundational, really, isn't it? And we can have no disrespect. I mean, for instance, think of it. Do we disrespect a dog or a cat for being a dog or a cat? So we've all been through millions of years and thousands of incarnations, and we meet people who are more or less starting out and are even making big mistakes because they are where they are, you know. Do we disrespect that? No. We, do we make fun of that? I mean, funny things happen, but we have to help the situation. And he says a lot of those who are taking, who are evolving now have very little karma to deal with. And he says, do you realize what that can mean, my brother?
That's right.
I mean, the speed at which they might be able to go, unencumbered by the karma that many of us have had to deal with, can put them the equal of a moonshainer real fast. See?
And when DK talks about the power of masses, he talks about that when the masses will realize the power which is in them, then the whole humanity will take a turn. And that's why the masses should be directed under the wings of hierarchy and not under the wings of the Black Lords. When we emphasize, and even the disciples, that there is some big thing in my mind, and some big thing what I'm thinking in relationship to the plurals is about that we are here to aid. We are here to aid this system to move forward. And that's why we cannot just forget our Dharma. However difficult it is, we should not count numbers in one sense. If you have one person there who is ready to listen to you, let that one person be there and support that person. We put our minds into wrong things. We want to have a comfort. No, the life of the disciple will never be comfortable in that sense, spiritually comfortable, but not in the outer form, because you have to just stand all of these pressing energies, all of these hindrances, all of these stops, all of these can you say slaybacks? Is that
feedback? What?
No, when everything goes, back. Backwards.
Reactions and
No,
flowbacks.
there is a certain word that I'm looking for. Sorry,
yeah, I mean,
sorry that my English.
Resistance, I don't know.
Resistance, and because all of that come on you. You will not even get help from your co-workers. You will listen, and you have to hear all of these excuses. Why not today? Why not then? Enthusiasm you will get when you are there and you uplift the emotions, but the work itself, it's so hard for human condition and for human being to really, really work. And the first decree is the symbolism of that work, because it's the labor of the birth. And every woman knows that, who have been given the birth. So it is a labor. Men know that because of the earlier incarnations when they were women. It's a labor. So let us not forget it. So we have to put our minds to that gosh, it is labor, and let it be labor. And let us give the 105% help at the moment for the Christ and for the great ones, that we can manage in this situation.
Good, it's good. There's a lot of heavy lifting going on this planet, because if you look around the planets, they're all populated by a kind of a human race and other life forms, but this is the only planet out of the usual ones that has living forms on the dense physical level. Otherwise it's etheric and more subtle. And we're just inheriting all kinds of moon chain stuff, first solar system stuff, that under Saturn we have to lift up,
And DK says something so interesting in some, I think it was in a race and initiation, where he talks about that what is the job of a human being, meaning all of us, is to uplift the lower lives. And that's why what he is pointing is that you have to be during the full moon times available. You have to be all the time available. It's the first priority of the disciples, but it is also for all human beings that we are here to help even the lower worlds ascend. And when we think about really, if we think about ourselves, if the head wants to be uplifted, it cannot be uplifted without the other parts of the body, or we then create very long neck. But anyway, there are the certain laws which are above us, what we cannot chase away. They will stand there, and that's why all this system, what we called about the Earth scheme, all the system has to be uplifted.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's a big job, and it's only going to get more intense. And future lives will be lived at a higher and higher point of tension. And, Master M, he jokes again, he says, you're worried about a few minor demons when the daggers of Satan are aimed at our backs. He's talking about the people in Shambhala, or the ones in Shambhala. So we'll keep on being able to carry more. I just wanted to say that the third initiation is discipleship on Sirius, and the fifth initiation is the first initiation on Sirius. I have a feeling we can extend that idea, that the first initiation, the fifth initiation, is discipleship in our local cosmic logos, and that the seventh initiation that the Christ is taking is a first initiation in our local 7 sons. Now I'm going to take that even further, okay? I'm going to say that the 7th initiation is discipleship within the one about whom naught may be said. And that the 9th initiation, whereby you can, start your long trip to wherever you're going, is like the 1st initiation in the one about whom naught may be said. So every high attainment is a low attainment compared to a larger whole or system. And we're just learning now what it might be like to be a disciple in relation to Sirius. Now, I'm aware that our time is fleeting, and that's just how it goes.
So we can continue. Actually, we can.
Yeah,
now
we can
change
we can see what we can do. There's other things.
Michael, we will change now the program the way that where we have about the hearing. We just can mention about the hearing, and then we can continue this.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. The first thing that happens is you hear the voice of the soul. That's called the voice of the silence.
Okay, now Michael jumped into our teaching, what was supposed to be later.
Okay, later then to you? Later. Okay.
Yeah, it was later, but it does not matter.
Yeah.
I mean that we can skip the whole...
Well, as long as I'm on the roll. Then the next thing is you feel the touch of the soul. Now that corresponds to not hearing, but the sense of touch. The next thing is you see the soul. And that is vision. That's the third thing, corresponds to the 5th ray. And then goes on taste and smell, and how those higher senses might work, I don't know. And other senses are there too. We have 5 senses right now, but there's also something called the common sense, which is the mind, and it's all 5 of them. And finally, the esoteric sense, which I think relates very much to the intuition and what you can find in the spiritual triad. So anyway, when you're taking this first initiation, you are called the twice born. Twice born. You were born once in a physical sense, and now you're born in the spirit. And this is there's another, and there's deaths too. There are different types of death. Sometimes a high birth is really a death to lesser conscious involvements. We're so attached, but through the death process, we can become detached from our previous attachments holding us down to earth. So apparently Jesus is saying something here to the disciple Nicodemus. He says, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. See, now that's the beginning of the first initiation. You actually, on the inner planes, you see the soul. Does it look like a lotus? Does it look like an angel? Does it look like a wheel of fire? Whatever symbolism is used, you see it internally at the first initiation. And one day we'll remember having seen it. See, the amazing thing about the modern era is that whoever has taken the first initiation in the modern era has already stood before the Christ. That's an amazing thought, So in other words, the world teacher knows that individual by name, the inner name, and doesn't forget. So I often wonder, how can you stand before the Christ 2 times and then veer off onto the left-hand path? Well, it's this love of illusion, this love of form. The form is so obsessing in your consciousness, like what happened to the Black Lodge types, that they just don't see anything beyond it. They don't see the love or the reality or the will that is different from the form. They just want the form. So what does DK call it? Unique mental blindness, or unique blindness. That they are brothers who have unique blindness. Now, basically, on this path of initiation, starting from initiation number 1, and Mercury, really, under Virgo, we are restoring sight to the blind. Restoring sight to the blind. And that's, we're just going to see more and more and be able to do more and more until we become a master of wisdom, and then more and more and more and more until the end, and there is no end. Okay. So let's see if there's anything else. We are really almost at that point. Do you have any, like I say, you can go to YouTube, and all of these 11 or however many programs with this compilation are there. And you can, get into it more deeply in the first 3 initiations. And basically, if we have to say it, the first initiation symbolizes the dedication of the physical body and physical plane life to the soul. So what kind of yoga would you expect to find at the first initiation? If you find Bhakti Yoga at the second initiation, what do you find at the first? Something material, right? More material, perhaps. I offer the suggestion that we find Karma Yoga at the first initiation, Bhakti Yoga at the second initiation, and is it Jnani or Jnani, I don't know how to pronounce it, Jnani Yoga at the third initiation. And eventually, and Raja Yoga progressively until Sea of Fire, Agni Yoga. It's all heading towards Agni Yoga in the Sea of Fire on the 7th plane. So we have done, we're pretty good. We've done about 1/4 of this curtailed compilation. This is not everything DK wrote on the first initiation, but it's quite a bit. So anyway, have we passed that? Have we dedicated the physical body and the physical plane life to the soul? That's the question. And when you're on the outlook or lookout for people who may have been passing through that experience or are now, this is again one of the distinguishing factors. Because we have to, we have to help people. All of us are trained now. We've had some years of training. And that means that as little as we know, and we always know very little, we know more than many people who are just starting out. And we can help. A lot of people are making that transition from normal religion into something more spiritual. We can be very useful there, I would say. And I'm sure that many of us try to be that way. All right. There's some wonderful things here in the next 18 or so pages. And we have gotten through the first program that I made for YouTube. But not quite. Not quite. Yeah. Just a couple more things. If you take the first initiation, you can rightly impose etheric energy upon physical energy. Now, what's in that etheric energy? Well, there's emotional impulse, mental impulse, soul impulse, and if you're really climbing the ladder here, maybe even triadal or monadic impulse. We won't worry about those right now. But the higher energies in the etheric body can be imposed on the habitual reactive rotary motion physical body and change the pattern. See, the seventh ray is all about changing the pattern, right? What's the planet of the seventh ray? Uranus. Pattern changer. And the third ray is Saturn. At first, rotary motion. So when you're looking at the first initiation, it's Uranus on Saturn. And recently, maybe not so recently anymore, but a lot of people were born with the Uranus-Saturn conjunction in Gemini, which is a sign associated with the first initiation. So do we take these higher energies and make the physical body behave in a certain way so that it doesn't get in the way? That's one of the big questions we have to ask. And we use the first initiation, we use the technique of indifference, and we try to live a life inspired by God, which really means what? Inspired by the soul, If we talk about God vaguely, we're not talking about the planetary logos paying attention to us, because he doesn't do that until the seventh initiation. But we're talking about the planetary logos and all of his emanations, one of which is the soul, and therefore his attention reaches us. And it ends with this statement: inspiration is the applied power of transmission. Whew. I thought to myself, well now, goodness, what really does that mean? And the higher energies are transmitted, and what is the result? You breathe in the fire, inspire, spirare, you breathe in the fire of the higher planes, and you become animated. What's anima? It's the soul, So we need to live the inspired life, and DK tells us that the big job of hierarchy is to inspire humanity. When we give a conference, we can talk about a lot of things after 32 years or whatever. The most important thing is that people will leave with some degree of inspiration that will last them for the coming year. Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's it. We have reached the point. Anything that anybody would like to say or ask? Okay, anything?
Maybe I will go and check the lunch situation.
Oh, okay. Because it seems that the physical body still requires food. I know a few breatharians. My experience with breatharians is that they don't look so healthy right now. Maybe later they will be. And also of this class. And not only do they not look so healthy, but their stomachs make strange noises. But nevertheless, they have the right idea, you know what I mean? So maybe someday we will really live on the prana and, doing the right thing physically. It's an Aquarian thing. Maybe some people can really do it. But probably a lot of people are basically wasting their time because they can't do it, and they might be concentrating on more immediate, pressing demands. Yeah, well, at the first initiation we pay huge attention to the condition of our physical vehicle. At the second, the same attention is given to our attitude, our emotional vehicle, and at the third degree, the mental vehicle really comes into focus. What does he say? You need their intuitive instinct. You've already got spiritual intelligence. You already have some degree of mental illumination. Now you need not just spiritual instinct, as at the first initiation. You need intuitive instinct, which starts to lead you into the cosmic etheric planes and into the realm of pure reason and the intuition. Okay, that's going to be... What, dear? 20 minutes? You mean we get to talk more? Oh no. Maybe we should just give everybody a little bit of free time. Or do you think not?
You can discuss. You could actually lead a meditation.
Okay, I'll tell you what. What, lead a little meditation? Why not? Now I will get rid of my picture. Okay. Okay, all right, well, let's have just a brief meditation, right? Well, I take it back. Okay. I will not. So let's use this little time to ask ourselves to what extent we have fulfilled the requirements of the first initiation and what still remains for us to do. So we begin by trying to feel in our consciousness the presence of the soul, of the higher lighted presence, consciousness. Now, the very first question you're going to ask, and it's maybe the hardest of all the questions, do I truly love my fellow human beings? And how do I know one way or another? And remember that loving one's fellow human beings is different from being attracted to a person or repelled by a person. Now, am I studying in such a way, either esoterically or spiritually, that I'm truly learning to discipline my life according to these studies? Am I really a student of these matters? And am I refining my life? Am I transmuting because that's the word for the first degree. Am I transmuting the matter in my vehicles through discipline? The higher frequencies, are they becoming more characteristic of my vehicles because I know the meaning of discipline? Am I really, really oriented towards the second aspect of divinity, towards the soul? And how do I know that I am? And what is the effect? Well, all true aspirants have taken the first initiation, and basically that would mean that we would be an aspirant who is also a disciple. And there would be a steadiness about our orientation and about how we tread the path. And if I wandered off the path, I'd come back soon, because that's the main orientation, the main goal. So, soul infusion, love, study, discipline, basically the control by the etheric body of the dense physical. The birth of the Christ in the heart and a higher type of creativity emerging. So with those ideas in mind, we'll just sound the Om to confirm the fact that we will be searching for the answers in our own case in relation to these requirements. And no student of DK or of Theosophy should pass by these requirements as too simple or old hat or long ago, or why bother with such simple things, because chances are we have missed some steps along the way. So, Okay, lots to think about, lots to apply as we forge ahead on the path and try to help others do the same. Anything?
So thank you for everybody. We have a little break. So we will come back then in the afternoon, here in Finland in the afternoon. And that would be 3:45 Finnish time. So it is 1:45 p.m. GMT, is it not?
No, dear.
No, the
wait a second.
astrology we will not.
With the astrology we might do.
We are not recording that. That is not going to stream.
Okay, then the other thing is more or less at 12:45 GMT. 12:45 GMT. Then we will have done a little bit of our astrology, and right? You subtract 3 hours from our time here for GMT. Right?
No, it's 15:45 here.
15:45 here and 12:45.
That's right.
In GMT. Okay.
GMT.
All right,
so
everybody.
again, we will say we come back.
Yeah.
12:45 p.m. GMT. Okay.
Yes.
So hear
Stay
you and see
stay
you
with us.
again. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye. Okay. Very good.
And